Welcome back to Amerisogyny. I'm your host, Hannah Blue. You're listening to episode 52, Never Grow Up. I won't be dropping this episode until next week, but today is International Women's Day. So I'm wishing a happy International Women's Day to all the women around the world, especially the women who listen to me, because you're the best. The title of this episode is called Never Grow Up. And listeners, you know me. I never bring you episodes that are typical. I always throw in my own mix. A little sugar, a little spice, and some of the stories I bring are not so nice. But in the end, they all have to do with mental health. And that's my flex. I believe in being unique and not copying anybody else. Not my style. The stories I'm going to bring you today is a roller coaster, just like mental health. Sometimes up, sometimes down. No matter how you're feeling today, even in the darkest of days, at the end of the tunnel, there's light and joy comes in the morning. Listeners, I know you're ready to rock. So let's get going. Our first stop, we're going to Nagoya, Japan, 1955, to talk about a great man, Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, Sandland, and more. Listeners, he is passed at the age of 68. In my previous episode, Nostalgia Mania, I talked a little bit about anime. Toriyama was an anime king. When you say the name Goku, most people know exactly who you're talking about. And why? Some of them grew up with him. Dragon Ball Z came out in 1984. Anime has been a huge part of my life since I was a girl. He passed away on March 1st. A statement of his passing was shared on the official Dragon Ball Z website. It read, "Dear friends and partners, we are deeply saddened to inform you that manga creator Akira Toriyama passed away on March 1st due to acute subdural hematoma. He was in the age of 68. It is our deep regret that he still had several works in the middle of creation with great enthusiasm. Also, he would have had many more things to achieve. However, he had left many manga titles and works of art to this world. Thanks to the support of so many people around the world, he has been able to continue his creative activities for over 45 years. We hope that Akira Toriyama's unique world of creation continues to be loved by everyone for a long time to come. We inform you of this sad news with gratefulness for your kindness during his lifetime. Funeral service was held with his family and very few relatives. Following his wishes for tranquility, we respectfully inform you that we would not accept flowers, condolences gifts, visiting, offerings, and others. Also, we ask you to refrain from conducting interviews with his family. Future plans for a commemorative gathering is not decided. We will let you know when it's confirmed. We deeply thank you for your understanding and support, as always. Anime fans, I am mourning right with you. It's almost like the passing of Stan Lee. Not only are we losing an icon, we're losing a bit of our childhoods. As I said in a previous episode, death, dying, and bereavement is a part of clinical psych, but it's so much more than that. For many of us, anime is used to help our mental health. There are so many sides to anime. It's electrifying, peaceful, fun, fantasy. You'd really have to be a fan of anime to understand the impact it has on people. And you'd also have to understand how big of a loss this is for the anime world. Rest in peace, Akira Toriyama. Thank you for sharing your vision with the world, and thank you for touching all of our hearts in every corner of the world. You will always be one of Japan's biggest stars, now immortalized in greatness. Still in Japan, folks. Japan is tired of piracy. And guess what they did? For the first time in history, they prosecuted a major overseas anime piracy site. And let me tell you, the people who ran the Chinese site B9 Good are not happy. On March 4th of this year, CODA, which is the Content Overseas Distribution Association, announced that the operators behind B9 Good were prosecuted for copyright infringement. And when I tell you they were making some money off of this site, 45,880 anime were illegally posted to the site. Now, people weren't clucking their tongues and saying, "Oh my God, that's a shame, I'm not going to watch," because over 300 million accesses to the site was in full force. 95% of the content came from Japan. Again, the site was Chinese. However, it was aimed at Japanese viewers. They knew anime was big in Japan. They just followed the money. But since there's no such thing as a free lunch, they had to pay up for what they ate. Japan took a huge bite out of their asses. The operators were named A, B, C, and D. Now that's hilarious. Operator A received 3 years in prison, suspended for 3.5 years, and was hit with a fine of 1.8 million yuan. That is $250,000 in the U.S. His home, worth 550,000 US dollars, was also seized, and rightfully so. It was financed through the site. I know operator A is MADAF. To me, he got a slap on the wrist because he was a first-time offender. Operator B was a woman. She's not having a happy International Women's Day, is she? Now, she was paid by Operator A and uploaded anime to the site. She received a 1-year sentence, suspended for 1.5 years. Operator C was a man, and he got off very easy. No prison time. Operator D, another woman, was also paid to upload pirated anime content. Now, she received 8 months in prison and suspended for 1 year. So really, none of these people went to prison, but you see how the men got the women to do their dirty work? Sneaky, wicked, tricksy, false, and misogynistic. Now, this has been a long time coming, but as the great Sam Cooke said, a change gonna come. And it would have come sooner, but B9 Good changed their domains 3 times, from Blue 920 to B9DM to B9 Good. And even though B9 Good was riding high, they're not the world's biggest anime piracy site. That's Anawatch. And Anawatch has also changed their name from 0.22 to Anawatch. And now it's High Anime. Now, B9 Good and Anawatch were so notorious, even our government has them on their watch list as the most notorious piracy sites in the world. And CODA says, we ain't done. CODA plans to annihilate all unauthorized use of Japanese content. Our next stop, Columbus, Ohio. My sister is very intelligent and thought-provoking. Sometimes she gives me piping hot tea, and I decide to share it with you guys. Now, She was going somewhere with the kids, and she told me about a neighbor who is very sweet, and they struck up a friendship because the neighbor is a very good person. Well, as she was walking to her car, she saw a group of kids with their mother, and the kids simultaneously knocked on her neighbor's door, and the mother did as well. And what did they do after? They ran, the kids and the mother. My sister said the kids and their mother were white. Her neighbor is black. So my sister stopped and stared at them. She said the kids got scared. Of course they did, because they knew what they were doing was wrong. But the mother pasted on a fake smile, walked up to them, and told my niece, "Oh, I like your hair," which was a lie, and they all knew it. I thought that was a very ignorant thing to do. And I'll tell you, kids learn racism not from schools, not even from their friends. They learn it primarily from their parents. Here is a woman with children, not a young woman at that, teaching her kids to terrorize others. And my sister said what she did was called N-word knocking. Now, I'm not going to say the N-word with a hard R, and I'll tell you why. There are some people who believe that just because some, I'm emphasizing some, Black people use the N-word, that they should use it too. I think this is very ignorant, because they are ignoring the fact that the N-word, especially with a hard R, when said by a non-person of color, has a different meaning. Let me break it down for you. If you are white and you say the N-word, you're not saying it as a term of endearment. You're saying it because it makes you feel powerful. And you can try to BS anybody on the planet, including yourself, but guess what? If you say it, you're racist. I don't care how many Black people say it. And that's just that. But she said it's called N-word knocking. And she sent me a definition. According to hatebase.org, an N-word knock is an English intimidation of Black families by anonymous knocking on their front doors. I tried to find some historical context on it, but couldn't. What I did find is that a lot of people, especially in the South, have adopted this as a term of knocking on someone's door as a prank and running away. My brother-in-law told my sister that someone had been knocking on their door as well, so now she knows who it is. Here's my take. As a mother, doesn't matter what color you are, but as a mother, for you to engage your kids in that type of behavior and you don't correct them, you don't stop them, you participate in the behavior with them, you are a cancer permeating within the minds of your children. Here's the thing. Again, the kids showed shame and embarrassment, but the mother did not. I'm going to be very real with some of you. Some of you are going to come across the wrong person, and either they're going to bash your head in or they're going to shoot you dead. Now, this podcast is about mental health. Can you guess what state of mind the mother is in? To think that this behavior is appropriate to teach to her children. I told my sister if I were there, I would walk straight over to that office and report her ass because she needs to be reported. According to my sister, Her neighbor is very nice, stays to herself, doesn't bother anybody. But we know not everyone in the world is like that. And this is how trouble gets started. Why would you bother anyone who isn't bothering you? I talk about mental health a lot. I'm a woman of science, but I'm also a woman of God, and I do believe evil exists. And it's not in the color of your skin, it's in your heart. If your heart is evil, then you are evil, no matter what color you are. Clearly, this mother has some issues, and she hasn't run into the right one. And if you don't know what that means, let me break it down, because I have a lot of different backgrounds listening to me. And sometimes I may say something you don't understand, especially if you live in a foreign country. But what I mean when I say she's going to meet the right one, she's going to run into the wrong person, and they're going to whoop her ass. Now, I'm not wishing that on her. I just see it coming, because karma is punctual. I've said it before. Evil doesn't die. It ages like everything else. I'm very proud of my sister for advocating for her neighbor, but I'm not surprised. That's just the woman she is, and that's why I love her. If anyone is listening to me and you know you engage in this type of behavior or worse, you better stop, because the energy you put in the universe comes right back to you. And that's just that. How this ties into the title, Never Grow Up. Some things are cool. Some things you keep throughout a lifetime, like anime. But in this case, with the mother, sometimes you have to grow up, put on your big girl panties, be a good role model for your children, and teach them to respect everyone. Clearly, this mother hasn't grown up. Watching anime is therapeutic, but terrorizing others is harmful. So either she's going to get it together, or someone is going to get her together. Our next stop, South Africa. Why are we going to South Africa? Because I'm not done talking about trash mothers. If there is one thing I despise, it is a trash mother. And before you say, now wait a minute, isn't she a Christian? Isn't she always talking about Jesus? Yep, you're right. I am a Christian. But guess what? I am imperfect as you can get. I'm not one of those Christians that walks around acting holier than thou, as if I'm at the right hand of Jesus and I've already earned a seat in heaven. I'm very aware of my shortcomings. I am very impatient and intolerant of people who are cruel, ignorant, mean, disgusting. I don't care who you are. I like looking at sexy men. That is lust of the eyes. I curse a little bit when I'm not thinking. My point is, I sin just like everybody else. So when I say I despise trash mothers, you can take that to the bank. And thank you. But before I get into this mother, which I don't even want to call her a mother, she is a monster. I think the reason I despise trash mothers the most is because I gave up everything for my daughter. I'd give my daughter my kidney, my heart, my life if she needed it. I gave up everything for her to move from Ohio to North Carolina, because when she regressed and I was finished with my degree, I was hoping that Duke Hospital could restore her capabilities just enough so that she could live life on her own terms. I wanted more than anything for my daughter to go to college. When she was born, I was looking at brochures. Yeah, I was. And all I wanted by the time that she was 18 I knew that autism couldn't be cured. That wasn't my goal. My goal was for her to speak again and decide what she wanted to do. If she wanted to go to college or trade school, if she wanted to get married, have a family, have a career, whatever she wanted to do, I was willing to work my ass off to see that it was done. There are a lot of people who are autistic and they have jobs and friends and families and careers, and that is all I wanted for my daughter. And then as the years went by, her neurologist at the time, Dr. McCarty, was very candid and very honest with me. He said, Miss Hannah, we don't know what happened to Isis. And I'm sorry, but she's always going to be severely autistic. This was right around the time she turned 18. And when I tell you, I cried and cried and cried. And I'm not a crier, guys. I'm really not. And I remember speaking to a woman. I'm not going to say her name. I'm not going to say where she's from, due to privacy reasons. But she was telling me how I could transition Isis into adulthood as an adult living with severe autism. And I just burst out crying. And she allowed me to cry. I don't talk about my daughter unless it's on Facebook with my family and friends, because one experience on TikTok taught me not to. One of the things I hate about TikTok is, and I know I'm going off a little bit, but once I bring it back around, you're going to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. People can take a small clip of what you say and manipulate it. So this person took a small clip of what I said and manipulated it and made it seem like I said I wanted my daughter's autism to be gone at 18. That's not what the fuck I said. Yeah, I'm cussing again. What I said was, I wanted to get her to 18. We wanted to beat this thing so that she could go to college. They neglected to screen record that. Anybody can be evil, disabled or not. And I said what I said. And I shouldn't have made a video, but I did respond because I was so angry and so hurt that someone could reach inside me, rip my pain out. But you know what? I put myself in that position. That's what social media does. When you put yourself out there, you open up yourself to toxic, mean-spirited, disgusting people. But I do feel comfortable talking about Isis on this podcast. I was on another site where there were some, I don't like the word high functioning. I'll say there were some people with autism who were able to have families and jobs and everything that I wanted my daughter to have, who took offense to my daughter's story. And let me tell you, I don't give a damn. Okay? I used to love the site. But after I shared her story, things started getting a little sketchy. And so eventually I got off because there was one person I could not stand who just took it over. When you are male, people are always going to listen to them, but I digress. The point is, when I say I gave up everything, I mean it. I gave up my family, my friends. I didn't know a soul when I moved to North Carolina. I gave up a scholarship to go to grad school. I have always wanted to have a graduate degree, you guys, for my daughter. I majored in clinical psychology for her. If autism had never knocked on our door when she was almost 2, I wouldn't have gone into clinical psych. I wouldn't be an advocate right now. Autism completely changed our lives. We moved from where we were living in Ohio to go live with my sister to save money for the trip to move to North Carolina. And Isis missed her teacher and her principal, the same ones I talked about in my elopement episode, the teacher and the principal who were alerted when Isis went missing, and the principal stood up for me in the police station, and I was shocked. Listen to that episode. It's really good. Well, she missed them, and she missed them to the point where she began to regress. I remember being on the phone with the woman who sponsored the scholarship. And I said, well, ma'am, I was looking at my daughter when I was talking to her. I said, is the scholarship transferable? She said, no. You would be a licensed school psychologist in Ohio. The scholarship is for Ohio. You can't take it with you. And I was looking at my daughter, and she was staring at a wall. That's something she used to do when she was very young, before we even knew that she was autistic. And I said, ma'am, I'm sorry. I have to go to North Carolina. That was over 10 years ago. I don't regret it. Over the years, I have mourned not being able to go to grad school, but I don't regret any decision that I've made moving to North Carolina. Not the fear or loneliness, not the toxic workplace I used to be in, and the things that happened to me there. I did it all for my daughter. So I don't understand how this mother in South Africa can sell her daughter, traffic her daughter for a little over $1,000. Let's get into it. Cape Town, South Africa is where we are. The little girl's name is Jocelyn Smith, and she is 6 years old. And this story broke on March 7th, and by that time, little Jocelyn had been missing for 3 weeks. Well, her mother was arrested and charged with kidnapping and selling or trafficking her daughter. They lived in a very small, impoverished community in Cape Town, South Africa. Who outed her? Her neighbors. What disturbs me? They found Jocelyn's bloody clothing near her home. The mother's name is Raquel Chantel Smith. She's called Kelly Smith. She and 3 other people, 2 men and a woman, were charged with kidnapping and human trafficking. One of the men is Smith's boyfriend, and she claimed she left Jocelyn with him on February 19th while she went to work. There are a lot of trash mothers out there who allow their boyfriends to abuse their daughters, and I just don't understand this mindset. Yeah, I have a degree in clinical psych. I studied the brain, but I still don't understand how women like this walk the earth. The suspects did not enter a plea, and they're still in custody. The police launched a major search, but they still haven't found little Jocelyn. When they found bloody clothing and a knife, they sent it to forensics. According to prosecutors, Kelly Smith and her entourage conspired to abduct Jocelyn and intentionally sold, delivered, or exchanged her. They face life in prison, but I think all of them should get the death penalty. Western Cape Province Police said, at this stage, we do not have a child. Our ultimate goal is to find the child. We still want to find that child alive, and I hope they do. But even if they find Jocelyn alive, she's still never going to grow up. And I mean emotionally. Trauma is something that exists with people, sometimes for a lifetime. She's never going to forget what her mother did to her. And in that way, she'll never grow up. I hope she has a chance and have a life despite all this madness. As for her mother, maybe one day I'll be able to pray for her soul, but today is not that day. Today, I hope she rots in hell. Our next stop, Scotland. Here's the story of a man who never grew up, in a sense, because he suffers from PTSD due to the trauma he experienced at a private boarding school. He is Angus Bell. He's 43, and he says he was subjected to sadistic abuse at Loretto and Musselburgh. Bell says this happened in the 90s and that he and other students were exposed to sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. And in 2023, the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry backed his story. Now I'm going to get into what they found in a minute, but first, let's talk about Mr. Bell. He claims kids were beaten on a daily basis with hockey sticks and cricket bats. He said, "I was a child trapped in a madhouse of violence and sexual and emotional abuse." Even now, decades later, remembering it can make me curl up and cry. I witnessed kids set on fire. We were beaten with hockey sticks and cricket bats daily. I was whipped with belt buckles, thrown down flights of stairs, locked in trunks, strangled. Every day was a cross between the purge and the Running Man. None of this would seem out of place in a torture site, let alone a school that costs families hundreds of thousands of pounds. For me, we're talking about thousands of assaults over more than 2,000 days. It was 8 years in hell. David Stock is a former teacher at Loretto, and he says Bell is telling the truth. Loretto was founded in 1827, and according to Stock, he said he told the officials what was going on at the schools, and after he told, they made his position untenable, meaning he couldn't get tenure, and he was forced to resign and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Stock believes the school covered up the abuse. He said, "If my warnings had been heeded, then the abuse which boys like Angus suffered might have never happened." According to testimony from other victims, the abuse was carried out by older pupils and even teachers. And the abuse, according to the article, was often linked to the fagging system, where younger pupils were effectively servants or fags for older ones. And that is a very derogatory slur for gay males. According to Bell, during the night, you'd be dragged from your bed by up to 14 older boys. You'd be beaten and carried through the building, screaming, and thrown into a bath of cold water, your head cracking off the enamel. Remember I talked about ice baths in a previous episode on asylums? So yeah, obviously they were doing that in this very elite private school. Bell continued, "I was thrown head first off a cliff. My face and spine were stamped on with rugby boots. My nose was broken. My face split open." Bell entered the school as a straight-A student, but eventually his grades plummeted. He had planned to go to Oxford or Cambridge, but barely scraped into any university. In college, he was withdrawn and had severe anxiety. Bell now lives in Canada with his wife and children and has been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. He says, "For 8 years, I was driven to the brink of suicide." Now, Loretto was investigated, and one of the investigators, Lady Smith, shared her findings on March 5th, 2024. It seems Scotland has quite an extensive history of child abuse in its schools. An investigation was launched against Morrison Academy. Morrison's is a boarding school. Lady Smith is the chair of the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry, and she said children who boarded at Morrison's were exposed to risks of sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. For many, those risks materialized, and the children were abused. That abuse has long-term impact. For decades, Morrison's harbored a culture of violence and emotional abuse. The abuse was primarily physical and emotional, but there was also sexual abuse. Some members of staff at Morrison's abused children both in the school and in the boarding houses. Corporal punishment was used excessively and inappropriately by staff. It was even used in advance of misbehavior taking place. On occasion, teachers indulged in mass beatings. Morrison's response to excessive and inappropriate corporal punishment was inadequate. Here's what else she found. Houses were poorly run and poorly managed. Even children abused other children. Older kids sexually abused younger kids in the boarding houses. There was a strong culture of not snitching, that means not reporting abuse, and kids who did tell were punished. What's mind-blowing? The school's reputation trumped child protection and employment and reference practices. Lady Smith also published about the abuse that went on at the Loretto School, and she's investigated other boarding schools as well. Angus Bell and the rest of the kids are prime examples of what it means to never grow up. No matter how hard they try to forget the trauma inflicted on them, they may never. They were robbed of their childhoods in a cruel and sadistic manner. Mr. Bell is suing Loretto, and I hope he gets his money. I'm never happy to hear when children are abused, no matter where they are in the world. Now, Angus Bell lived to tell his story, but our last stop is about a teen who never got the chance. We're traveling to Oklahoma, USA, to talk about 16-year-old Nex Benedict, a non-binary teenager who died one day after a fight in a high school bathroom. Candlelight vigils were held all across the country for Nex, including Oklahoma, Boston, Minneapolis, New York, Southern California, El Paso, Texas, Virginia, and more. Nex got into a fight with 3 girls in a bathroom at school. According to police, they attacked Nex for pouring water on them. One day after the fight, emergency responders were called, saying that Nex's breathing was shallow, their eyes were rolling back in their head, and their hands were curled. Nex died on February 7th, and according to his friends and family, he used the he, him pronouns. Nex identified as a trans teen. He lived in Owasso, Oklahoma, was a straight-A student and a talented artist who loved animals. He liked cooking and playing Minecraft. His friends say that he was fiery and adventurous. What's crazy to me, the girls he got into a fight with didn't know him. And why was he in a female bathroom? Because Oklahoma is very against transgender teens. In 2022, Oklahoma passed a law requiring public school students to use the bathroom for the sex they were assigned at birth. Allegedly, the girls started picking on Nex, and Nex threw water at them from a water bottle he was carrying. They attacked him and grabbed his hair. According to Nex, they got my legs out from under me, got me on the ground, and started beating the shit out of me. Nex said he blacked out. According to Sue Benedict, his grandmother and adoptive parent, he was covered in bruises. And despite him being knocked unconscious and video showing him appearing to sway on his feet while walking, no one at the Owasso High School called for medical services or police, and they blamed it on district protocols. So no, they didn't get medical help for Nex. What the school did was suspend him. Now, the school says all of the parties involved walked under their own power to the nurse's office, where they were examined and cleared by the nurse. But the nurse wanted Nex to have a more thorough medical exam. So later that day, his grandma took him to the hospital and called an officer because she wanted charges to be filed against the girls. Now get this. The school's resource officer, Caleb Thompson, discouraged Nex from pursuing the case, telling him that by throwing the water on the girls, he essentially started it, and it was a mutual fight. It was then that Sue decided not to press charges. A relative received a text from Nex saying, "I got jumped at school 3-on-1. I had to go to the ER. If I'm still dizzy and nauseous in the morning, I might have a concussion." But the next morning, his grandma called 911 because she had found Nex unconscious, exhibiting the symptoms I described previously. Nex returned to the hospital, but was pronounced dead soon after he arrived. Police went to the school with a search warrant and collected written statements from the officials. Police have been waffling back and forth. At first, they said all charges will be on the table for the girls who attacked Nex. Then they released a statement that said Nex's death was unconnected to the fight. And then they came back and said the fight has not been ruled out as a cause of death. Owasso Public Schools told the media that they take reports of bullying very seriously and that any bullying accusations are investigated by administrators. But due to their knowledge, there were no reported bullying incidents by Nex or on Nex's behalf during the 2023-2024 school year. I don't believe that for a minute. This was a transgender high school student in a state that is intolerant of the LGBTQ community. Do you actually believe this was the first time ever he had been into an altercation or bullied? That's bullshit. Since 2022, Oklahoma has prevented trans people from getting health care. I've talked about this in a previous episode about GOP's war on the transgender community. Oklahoma has forced transgender students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that don't align with their identity. They have blocked them from getting gender-affirming health care and has blocked trans people from legally identifying as their correct gender. Oklahoma has the highest number of bills against the LGBTQ community in the country, 54. At the heart of the hate is the absolutely evil, despicable, transphobic education superintendent Ryan Walters. Walters has been committed to attacking trans kids. In June of 2023, the Oklahoma Department of Education, headed by Walters, released a YouTube video called "Protecting Students from Leftist Social Experiments by Upholding the Law." The video portrays an alleged assault of a cis girl by a trans girl. The video portrayed the trans girl as a violent, predatory male who needed to be kept out of girls' bathrooms for the safety of cisgender girls. After Nex died, he called his death a tragedy, but he said he wants the focus to be on the basics in education and insisted he will not play woke gender games and will not back down to a woke mob. Activists around our country have called for his resignation, saying that he has fostered a culture of violence and hate in Oklahoma schools. So what else has he done? He appointed anti-trans MAGA influencer Chaya Raichik to serve on a media advisory committee for the Oklahoma school library system. Get this, Raichik doesn't even live in Oklahoma. She told the Washington Post she had one visit to the state. She is the creator of Libs of TikTok, and trust and believe, she is anti-LGBTQ. She's also a bully. She has targeted teachers who offer support for queer and trans teens by accusing them of spreading a woke liberal agenda. Tyler Wren is a former teacher of Nex. After Wren posted a video message of support for queer teens to his TikTok page in 2022, Raichik Remember how I told you how people can screenshot you? Screenshot him and amplified it, causing people to attack and bully the teacher. Oh, this happens a lot on TikTok. Now do you see why I share the story of my daughter? The most disgusting people take what you love, what you're passionate about, and turn it into ugly, sickening bullying. No matter what it is. Rachel has no remorse for Nex's death. She repeatedly misgendered him to the Washington Post, saying his death was horrible, but described gender variance as a mental illness and spoke of wanting to eradicate gender ideology from public life. She is absolutely sickening. Conservatives have no love for queer or trans teens. In addition to attacking women's rights on abortion, attacking IVF, they want to take away the rights of queer and trans kids. State Senator Tom Woods said, "We are a Republican state, supermajority in the House and the Senate. Let me stop there. Democrats, we need to change that." He went on to say, "I represent a constituency that doesn't want that filth in Oklahoma." And who is he calling filth? Nex and other LGBTQ people. That's right. He calls them filth. Let me ask you a question, America. Is this who we want running our country? People who believe women don't have the right to decide what happens to their bodies? People who believe women should not have access to IVF if they can't have children? And people who refer to the LGBTQ community as filth? These people say they want to make America great. I see nothing great about what they're doing. All they're doing is spreading hatred. According to former Oklahoma teacher Tiger Songbird, when I heard news of Nex Benedict, I found the news predictable and inevitable. The culture and climate that Republicans have fomented, where politicians days after Nex's passing call LGBTQ plus people filth, helped precipitate such a tragedy. Sonberg said he resigned his position in 2022 after realizing that hate was going to win. The Department of Education has now launched a federal investigation into the death of Nex Benedict. The Office for Civil Rights launched the investigation in response to a letter from the Human Rights Campaign dated February 21st. The Human Rights Campaign is our nation's largest LGBTQ advocacy group, and it accused Nex's school district of failing to respond to sex-based harassment that may have contributed to his death. Keep in mind, we still don't know exactly how Nex died, and according to his grandmother, Nex did not see themselves as male or female. Nex saw themselves right down the middle. So in researching articles that I found on his death, his identity still isn't clear, but I'm going to go with what the grandmother says. At a vigil in Oklahoma, Nex's friend said he went by he, him, and they, them pronouns. According to advocacy groups, Nex belonged to the Choctaw Nation, an indigenous nation. The Department of Education told the media it began the investigation on March 1st, but did not say how long it may take. I am saddened for Nex, his grandmother, his friends, everyone who loved Nex. And I do agree that Ryan Walters needs to be removed. He has no business being in education. At a state board of education meeting, he said, "Gender fluidity is the most radical concept we've ever come across in K-12 education," and accused the Biden administration of weaponizing the education department to push gender ideology on kids. Walters said, "I will continue to fight for parents and will never back down to the woke mob. He is disgusting. I can't even imagine the number of kids who have been bullied in Oklahoma schools. Next didn't deserve to die like that. No one does. Rest in peace, Next. I hope you get the justice you deserve. Listeners, I'd love to bring you more stories, but I'm out of time. If you learned anything in today's episode, feel free to follow me on Podbean, Spotify, Samsung, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and more. The content I discussed in this episode, Never Grow Up, may be hard to hear. My goal isn't for people to agree with me on everything I say, but if I can ignite a spark of advocacy in you for people who cannot help themselves, then I've also done my job. So with that, be easy, take care of yourselves, have a good weekend, and as always, God bless.